I have the pleasure now of saying a few words about the lovely Julian Lewis. So, how did his friends and family summarise him? Well, creative thinker, fun-loving, sociable, gentle giant, rugger-bugger. Just had to get bugger in there on the stage somewhere. Now, what's Julian not very good at? He's crap at DIY, apparently. So let me tell you, on the reverse of that, what he's absolutely amazing at, which is organising parties and socials. Who agrees? Who's been to a Julian event? Yes! For those of you that haven't, actually, there's a really good Julian and Linda event that happens every February, and that's something that we've affectionately called, even though it's not trademarked, as Tim tells me, Ski B and I. So if you're interested in coming along with us, please do speak to Linda and Jules, because we do have 6 to 7 places left for that, and it is the most amazing party organised by the Lewis crew, so you can see their skills in action. Now, as I introduce Julian to the stage, we will all be upstanding again for a massive B&I round of applause for your final speaker, who will be affectionately known from now on as Big Banana. Please, Julian.
Are you ready for some fun? Yeah, we are. Okay, I can work with half of you. That's not a problem at all. As you know, I'm not on my own doing this presentation. This presentation is such a big responsibility, talking about B&I's philosophy, that it needed balance. And I have a fellow speaker who epitomizes giver's gain. He thinks he knows what I'm going to say next. He thinks he might have got away with not knowing his nicknames. Do you want to know what they are? Yes. Johnny One Beat. That's fairly obvious, okay, he's a drummer. And this one, Cyril the Axe Murderer. So, yeah, I don't know either. Apparently, buy him a drink later on, he'll tell you all about that. And what's Greg's favourite possession? Shoes! Absolutely, shoes. And he will never leave the house without fantastic shoes. As I said, Greg epitomizes giver's gain. He is a superstar on this stage, and yet he's a humble person. As soon as he joined the ED team, I knew this man was pure class. Please go absolutely wild for the legend that is Greg Davies. Yeah!
Mate, can we just crack on with this and get to the awards dinner? I could do with a drink.
What's up, mate? We got a really positive and motivational speech to give here, and you're being like this.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah, it's just you and me. What?
Okay, good. Okay. I'm just not feeling it right now. I've been running around all over the place. I've been helping everyone. I've been training them. I've been speaking in the regions. I've been listening to all their problems. When I look at what I've got back in return, I've got like less than 1/10 of what I've given out. I just not feeling the love anymore. Don't patronise me.
Greg, sounds to me like you need to learn the 7 principles of giver's gain.
What?
Giver's gain, the 7 principles of giver's gain are about living giver's gain in a sustainable way, about making sure we have the maximum impact on our community over a long period of time. If we don't adopt the principles, you can end up burning out, and you can give up on giver's gain. I don't want you to give up on giver's gain, Greg.
Look, I know about Giver's Gain. I'm not sure how breaking it down into 7 little chunks is actually going to help me.
Look, it's because a lot of people just drift along without any Giver's Gain strategy or a casual strategy. The 7 principles of Giver's Gain have been developed to help people be comfortable with Giver's Gain. And I think right now we could run through those principles, Greg, because it's really going to help you if you're feeling this way. It might help some of the other people in here as well.
No. Look, we can't change what we were going to do. We've got slides, we've got music, there's some videos. I've even written some bad jokes. All I'm going to do, let me paint on a smile. I'll get over myself. Let's just rock it.
No, mate. I'm not leaving here until your Giver's Gain spirit is back. I'll make your stories and even the very bad jokes fit. Should we start?
Look, I don't believe you, but I trust you. Go on then.
Okay. Principle number 1 of Giver's Gain is give without expectation. This is the principle that people think they understand when they first hear BNI's philosophy of Giver's Gain. But the philosophy is often corrupted into other meanings. One of those corruptions is matching, where I give something to you, I expect the same thing back. For an example, if you invite someone round to dinner, some people expect to be invited back round. That's matching, and matching is not Giver's Gain. Giver's Gain is based on social reciprocity, the giving forward into the community. Now, it is true that if I give to you, you are motivated to give back to me, and we see that all the time. But this reality actually masks the principle of Giver's Gain, that we should give without expectation. The motivation for giving, it should be a true gift, and it shouldn't be used to manipulate or motivate a desired outcome for the giver. Giver's Gain is not a hammer to beat people with. There's no measure of Giver's Gain, no points. It's not a league table. It needs to be personal to you. Does it feel right to you? Greg, have you ever given anything without expectation of something in return? And have you ever received something knowing that the giver didn't expect anything back?
Well, yeah, of course I have, and I totally get that one. And all you're doing right now is reinforcing exactly how I'm feeling. You've got a long way to go to prove to me that the smoothie's worth the blending.
Do you mean the juice is worth the squeeze?
That as well, yeah.
Yes. Look, Greg, there's 6 more, and wait before you hear all of them before you give up on Giver's Gain. You have to apply them all to truly live in harmony with Giver's Gain.
Okay, what's number 2?
Number 2. Principle number 2 is, are they in your light? And the principle number 2 is based on the book, Who's in Your Room, by Ivan Misner, Rick Sapio, and Stuart Emery. The book describes your life as a room where everyone that enters it affects your life forever, and they can never get out. Sounds frightening, yeah? But the book gives you tools and exercises that make you live a life of harmony. Principle number 2 asks you to evaluate where people are in your room. Are they in the light, in the center of the room, or are they in the dark corners of your room? You should be giving more to people that are closer to your light because they share your values and they will give you more giving energy in return. And the more giving energy we have, the more energy we have for more giving. We should give more where we have strong relationships. And in that way, we become strong members of a Giver's Gain community.
Yeah, so the first one made perfect sense to me, but I feel like you're reaching a bit and we're only on number 2. I don't think there's a person in the world that can convince me that all of my giving activities are controlled by some dull 60-watt bulb in the middle of the room of life.
What, no one?
Yeah, no one.
What, absolutely no one?
But literally no one. If you can't convince me, then who can?
Could I phone a friend?
You can phone a friend for 2 reasons. If you're on a game show or if you've been arrested. Again.
Look, I can see you're in a bit of a mood.
Oh, really?
but I've got the one person on speed dial that I think might be able to help us. Alan, can you get my friend on Skype, please?
This only actually works if they pick up.
Don't worry, it always picks up for me.
Well, I knew you were lying when you used the word friend.
It's all right. Just get into his desk, all right?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Jules. Wait a minute. Are you at Phil Berg's chapter? Phil, you're looking good, man.
Hi, Evan. Not quite. We're at the UK and Ireland's national conference, and I need your help with something.
Anything I can do? All you have to do is ask. We're buds. We're buds, Jules.
Thank you. We're closing the conference and are meant to be presenting a positive and motivational session.
So when you say we, you mean?
Greg Davies and I.
Okay, interesting choice. Has he stopped smiling and bouncing around yet?
Well, that's the problem. He's totally lost his Giver's Game mojo, and I'm going to help him get it back. We're going through the Giver's Game principles.
So the 7 principles, how's that going so far?
We're on number 2. Are they in your light? He doesn't get it. Can you help?
Well, first of all, it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't get it. We need to work with him a little bit on this. The bottom line with principle number 2 is it's about your ability to give and to be influenced on how close people are with you. This is all about relationships and do they trust you? Relationships are the key. It's so funny because people, I have found, spend so much time talking about the transactional process of networking that they forget about the key of relationships and do they trust you? And the closer they are to you, the concept of the light being close in the center of that room, the more they're at center with you in your room or in your life, the closer the relationship. Nothing kills a relationship quicker than benign neglect. And that means that you're just not investing time and energy into the relationship. You're not meeting with them weekly like at a BNI meeting. You're not doing one-to-one meetings with them. You're not giving them a call. You're not staying in touch with them. And so it's really, really important in order to keep people in your light to maintain that relationship. Benign neglect will kill it.
Thanks, Ivan. That's perfect. That's really going to help Greg. Honestly.
No problem. Hopefully you've got it from here, so I'll see you both soon.
Cheers, Ivan.
Bit of a time lag there?
Yeah, well, he's a long way away. He's in Texas, isn't he? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, what about that?
Well, I've got nowhere to go now, have I? Straight from the mouth of the master. Okay, so relationships are important in Giver's Gain and in life itself, but the real question is, how the hell have you got Ivan on speed dial?
Well, we've been working on the 7 principles of Giver's Game for quite a while now. And as you've heard, we're buds. Should we move on to principle number 3?
Yeah, I think we better.
Principle number 3, give what you can afford. Seems obvious, yes? But the principle has depth in order for you to be a sustainable member of a Giver's Gain community. Give what you can afford is obvious if we're talking about money. It's less obvious if we're talking about time or energy. Regardless of how you feel about time or energy, it's harder to quantify what we mean, what we can afford, and the quantities we can give and the frequencies we can give them. A simple analogy that we like to use is that we should give from our saucer once our cup is overflowing. We should think about this, especially when we think about time, knowledge, gifts, energy, influence, and money. Greg, recently I think your cup has been reducing. And you're just reducing everything you've got, especially your energy, mate, because you look knackered.
Oh, thanks, mate. None taken.
Look, I also think that some people have an overflowing cup, in fact, maybe even an overflowing saucer, and yet they still don't give, but they expect to receive. Give what you can afford is about being an authentic member of the Giver's Gain community. It's about playing fair, Playing safe is not giver's gain. At the end of the day, it's about respect and about genuinely considering, can I afford to give what I'm about to give? Do you always give what you can afford, Greg?
Well, if you've noticed, obviously not. I mean, I need to embrace that principle, I think, because I'm feeling overstretched and I'm obviously not allowing myself time to recharge. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I think you're right.
That's really good to hear. I want to move on to number 4 quite quickly because it's very closely aligned to number 3. It's okay to gain. Receiving is all part of the philosophy of giver's gain. Giver's gain is 2 words, and being a good receiver is all part of the philosophy. It's also okay to look for opportunities to gain, and that way you become an equal part of the giver's gain community. We need to be receptive to gaining and not being superior, like, you can possibly help me, I'm the person that helps you. Gain is very much part of giver's gain as a philosophy. We all have the right to give, and we all have the right to gain.
No, this one doesn't sit right with me. It's all about the giving. The gaining just doesn't cross my mind. No.
Look, it's okay to ask your giver's gain community for support when you need it. Ivan created giver's gain, and I think it's really important that we understand this. Otherwise, we'll end up running on empty and dropping out of the giver's gain community. I want to get Ivan back on Skype.
Well, hang on. So every time I disagree with you, you're just going to call in your bud to back you up? That ain't fair, is it?
Well, it might not be fair, mate, but he created giver's gain. It's very important that you hear this message. Alan, Skype, please, my friend. He's at his desk this time. It'll be good. Sorry, Ivan. Greg is still not getting it.
Well, we need to crack this. How can I help you this time?
It's number 4.
Okay. So this is the one where it's okay to gain. One of the most important and I think regularly misunderstood principles. You know, the whole idea of giver's gain is to give to people, but gain is part of that phrase. It's also okay to receive, to gain. You know, I think you guys talked about the cup and the saucer concept. This is a really powerful concept that we fill our cup, and from our cup it overflows into our saucer, and that we give from the saucer. But you have to let the cup fill, which means it's okay to gain. I didn't start BNI with just the idea of giving to others. I started BNI with the idea that we would also receive business and help and support from others. So I'm a big believer in the gain part, but you do it respectfully, you do it professionally. For example, when I wasn't getting business from other people and I was giving business to them, I would sit down with them and I would say, how did this referral work out that I gave to you? And how did this referral work out? And how did that one work out? And they would then share with me, oh, this was great. I got a ton of business from this, and that was fantastic. Then very tactfully, I would say to people, I'm really pleased that those things have worked out for you. That was my goal. It would be great if you would be able to do the same for me. And maybe we could spend just a little bit of time talking about how you might be able to reciprocate. That's part of the giver's gain. It's part of the law of reciprocity, this idea of what goes around comes around. So there's nothing wrong with gaining. Give from your saucer, but fill that cup and help teach people how to fill that cup.
Thank you, Ivan. That is really brilliant.
Yeah, my pleasure. I've got a dash. Elizabeth is calling me.
Okay, see you later.
Bye.
So, Greg, does that make the gaining part of giver's gain a little bit more comfortable for you?
Oh, he's amazing. Look, honestly, that could have been about 3 and 4. So, all right, I'm trying to work with you here. So I should only be given the excess of what I have available, but also by allowing myself to gain, I'm refilling my reserves and I'm giving everyone else the opportunity of experience that wonderful gift, which is giving.
Yes, mate. We're getting there. You really are getting this. Just a little bit more work to do before we get the Greg Davies Give Us Game mojo right back.
All right, calm down.
Okay. Let's move on. Principle number 5. Stay humble. Giving is not a badge of honor. It's not self-promotion. It's not a status. And it shouldn't be used to put people down like, oh, how many referrals did you give today? The best form of giving is where you give where no one will ever know that you made that gift. It should be enough to know that you helped someone. We should also understand that there's no guarantee that we'll be able to continue our giving. And whilst we're able to give now, being part of the Givers Gain community will mean that maybe in the future we will be on the gain side. We should feel the privilege of knowing the impact that our giving is having to the community, and we should exercise that privilege with humility. There should be no bragging about giving.
As you know, I am extraordinarily humble. No, seriously, joking aside, this one resonates with me perfectly. I think you even mentioned it in your intro.
I did if I remembered, yes.
You did.
I think you've got that one, Greg. Let's move on, because there's 2 more to understand. Little cough.
Don't call me that.
I'll give you that.
Thanks.
No problem. Principle number 6, exceed expectations. There are many forms of giving, but one of the forms of giving that certainly in BNI that we understand is referrals. And sometimes those referrals are very simple, like the accountant given to a bookkeeper, a web designer given to a printer, or a plumber given to an electrician. But sometimes they are much more complicated. Some of the most powerful referrals we ever give is not just where we give in the flow of the stream, but where we step outside that flow and we might generate business for someone that is not in our contact sphere. But we should also think about how we give our time and our knowledge and our support. Do we like a post on social media? Do we read a blog? Do we go to someone's event? We need to be the person that does. And when we are the person that does, we need to exceed expectations every time we do. How does that fit?
I'm getting there. I'm almost there. But I'm worried if I embrace this, if I'm always the person who does, am I going to drain myself again and just end right back at the start? You know, feeling like I did when I walked on. Now, I can't believe I'm asking you this, but would you mind bringing Ivan in on this one?
Oh, you want him now, do you?
I want Ivan now.
Okay. Alan, can you get Ivan back for me, please?
Mr. Lewis, I love you, man, but this is the 3rd call today. And I like helping, but I'm pretty close to blocking your phone number right now. Okay, I wouldn't really do that, but Beth and I are about to go do some meditation, so you just caught me in time. What can I do to help you?
Thank you, Ivan. I think we're almost there. I remember you had some great thoughts about principle number 6. Could you share these thoughts with Greg and help him out a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Greg needs some help, doesn't he? He's a little slow on the uptake, so let's see if we can help him out. I really think that it's important to exceed expectations. I have always said under promise and over deliver. This is particularly true in a networking environment, especially true when you're getting a referral. So that when you get that referral, you want to over deliver. You want the person who gets that referral, the person that you're working with, to have a wow experience. And that begins at the very beginning. So one of the things I recommend is that when you get that referral and you go to meet that person, the very first thing you should talk about, and this is counterintuitive, because people want to go and then start talking about how they can take care of that individual's needs. No, instead what you want to do is edify the person that referred you. If you want to exceed people's expectations, start with that. So you go, you meet the referral source, and you talk about the other person. So Jules, if you gave me a referral, the first thing I would do is I'd go to that person and say, hey, how do you know Jules? I've known him for years. He's fantastic. He's really good at this and this and this. I'm so glad that he referred me. I would edify you. Now, then that's the first step in exceeding someone's expectations, because now your referral source is going to say, wow, that Ivan guy really loves you. He really thinks that you're really good. It was very nice talking to him. So edify the referral source to begin with, and then knock it out of the park. You have got to do a great job when you are providing a service to someone within BNI, because, well, look, there's no place to hide. If you don't do a good job, you're going to show up at that meeting, you're going to be sitting right across from them. You have got to exceed people's expectations. And when you do that, they will give you stronger testimonials and they will refer you like crazy. It is so important.
Thank you, Ivan. I'm sure that Greg will be okay now. Your experience and expertise has helped us a lot.
Hey, no problem at all. You know, I love to help, especially when it comes to Giver's Gain and making sure that people understand this philosophy. Thanks a lot.
Bye then. There you go, Greg. That's an example that once you've looked at the other principles of Giver's Gain and you've decided it's the right thing to give, that you should exceed expectations when you do so. Do you get that?
Oh, it's perfect. I love that. And I know Ivan thinks I'm a little slow on the uptake, but I can count. And strangely, it feels like there is just one piece missing.
Well, yeah, and that piece, and we heard it very well this morning from Russ. The final principle of Giver's Gain is to say thank you. The act of giving can sometimes be very quick, almost like a reflex action. But sometimes it can take months. Whether it's a reflex or a journey, a simple thank you reinvigorates the giver so they want to give again. And a small act often transfers into huge opportunities. What we should be doing is going back and thanking the person for the impact they have had on our life. And if we do it in this way, the giving grows. So we must say thank you every single time. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it costs nothing but means the absolute world just to say thank you. I actually find it rude when people just can't be bothered to pick up the phone and give that thanks. It just completes the set perfectly.
So those are the 7 principles of Giver's Gain. They can act as a guide as we live a life in harmony with Giver's Gain at the center of our core values. When they're all applied equally, we can become a valuable part of any Giver's Gain community.
Oh, mate, they're amazing. They're amazing. I can see you've worked really hard on them, and I can see how they work really well in BNI.
Well, you're right, they do work in BNI. But you're wrong. Because Giver's Gain is very powerful. It's so much bigger than BNI. Just imagine a world where everybody lived Giver's Gain every day. Our neighbours, our employers, our sports people, our politicians.
Ooh.
Our friends, our family, everybody. What kind of society could Giver's Gain create? We would be giving without expectation. We would be giving to people in all areas of our light appropriately. We would understand that we should give what we can afford from our saucer, and also that it's okay to gain in such a society where we're humble, where we exceed expectations, and where saying thank you is the norm. I want to give you an example about the power of BNI, the power of Giver's Gain, and about how Giver's Gain can change the world. In 1987, Her Royal Highness Princess Diana opened the UK's first dedicated HIV ward that was purely for the people suffering with that disease at London's Middlesex Hospital.
The Broderick ward of the Middlesex Hospital is the only specially designed AIDS ward in Britain. Today, the hospital reckoned that the princess's visit was worth all the government propaganda put together. She met the staff and the 9 patients and shook hands with them all. But for the duration of the visit, the patients moved from their usual beds to side rooms because they refused to be filmed or interviewed. Only this patient agreed to a still photograph with the princess, and then only with his back to the camera. But a male nurse on the ward, Shane Snape, who is 28 and is himself HIV infected, spoke out to her about the myths surrounding AIDS.
Well, I think the princess actually helped get that message across by the mere fact that she wasn't wearing gloves and the mere fact that she shook hands with the patients and myself.
Has that made you feel better about the whole thing at the moment?
But certainly in the respect that the lead up to Princess Diana coming was, will she or won't she wear gloves? And she didn't. I mean, I believe she wouldn't, and she's lived up to what I believed. She knew the facts. I don't routinely tell all the patients I'm HIV. I don't think I have the right to actually burden them with it. But certainly there will come a time sooner or later where they will say the magic words, "You don't understand." And that's when I can say, "You're assuming a hell of a lot." I too am positive.
With the unveiling of the plaque, which specifically refers to HIV infection, another big step was taken in the campaign against AIDS, and the princess had helped dispel some superstitions about the disease. Anthony Carthy, News at 10 at the Middlesex Hospital.
What Diana did was she gave her influence to the world. She used her intelligence to back causes that would make a difference to how people think. She changed people's behaviour and she changed government policy. If a royal could shake the hands of an HIV patient, we knew that we could also shake the hands of HIV-infected people at the bus stop and in the supermarket. Diana gave her influence and she changed thinking on HIV. Just imagine a world where everybody lived giver's gain. It's too powerful. Mate, it's too powerful for you to give up on. Give giver's gain a second chance.
It's too powerful. I can see how it'd change everything we do in BNI and everything out there in the world. Do you know what, mate? Do you know what? I'm back. Sorry, I've just always wanted to do that. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for indulging me. We needed to lighten the mood, didn't we? Look, on a serious note, that reminds me of a story that I love to tell. And Jules, as you know, I enjoy a good story.
After all, mate, you are the story fella.
Copyright 2018. I want to tell you about someone who was at the total other end of the giver's gain spectrum. Iqbal Masih was born into a poverty-stricken family in the city of Makhdal in Pakistan. By the age of 4, his family had run up such an insurmountable debt that they had no choice but to sell him into slavery, into bonded labour. You see, the local carpet industry was run by the crime syndicates, and they would get families addicted to drugs and alcohol and gambling and then offer them loans with ridiculous interest rates that they would never be able to pay back. So at the age of 4, Iqbal went to the workhouse. Oh, and to give you an idea of what that debt was, it was about 600 rupees, which is about £5. Iqbal worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. But because of the way that the loan was structured and the fact that he was charged for his accommodation, he was charged for his food, and he was penalised financially for any mistakes that he made whilst making carpets, his loan never decreased. In fact, it increased. He would be there for the rest of his life. After a few years of incredibly hard labour in this factory, something caught his eye. It was a newspaper on the factory floor, and the headline struck him like a hammer. Bonded labour had been made illegal in Pakistan. So he managed to break free from his shackles and run to the nearest police station. He burst through the doors and went and pleaded with the police chief. He said, "I know this practice is illegal now. Please come and help my friends that are in the factory." Iqbal received the worst beating of his life, and he was dragged back to the factory. You see, the legislation had changed, but the system was still corrupt. But Iqbal wasn't going to stop there. He escaped again, but this time he went and sought out a charity that he had heard was operating in his area. The charity took him in, they clothed him and they fed him, and they gave him the one thing that he hadn't had up until that point in his life. They gave him an education, something that he was so hungry for. He completed a 4-year school course in just 2 years, with the aim of becoming a lawyer to help more children in his position. In his spare time, he didn't go out and play football or play in the street. He toured around with the charity workers, speaking outside factory gates and in villages that had lost children. And he personally inspired over 300 kids to break free of their bonds. When he was 12 years old, he said to the charity workers that he wanted to ride his bikes through the streets of a town where he once lived with some of his friends. They pleaded him not to. You see, Iqbal had been receiving death threats from these crime syndicates because the message he was telling was such a threat to their way of life, they felt like they needed to silence him. But Iqbal said, no, I don't just want to go and ride my bike with my friends. I want to ride it past the houses of the families that no longer have children sat around their table. Because when they hear me laughing and then when they see my smile, they'll have hope that their children will once come home. Iqbal's body was found at the side of a road the next morning. He had been shot and killed by a local criminal that had direct links back to the first factory that he was shackled. You see, his message was so powerful that they had to silence him. But Givers Gain can't be silenced. On news of his death, his picture, this picture, went around the world. This was the picture that inspired people to take action. Hundreds of charities were set up. Lobbying groups approached the Pakistani government, and they ensured that the legislation that was in place had to be followed because the economic downturn in the textile industry was absolutely crippling. Iqbal has been posthumously awarded prizes by the International Children's Fund and by UNICEF, and he has been mentioned in acceptance speeches for the Nobel Peace Prize as the spark, the moment where people decided to take action. At every stage in Iqbal's life where he had free will, he chose Givers Gain. When he first escaped from the factory, he could have bled into the background, he could have disappeared, but he didn't. He went running to a police station to help his friends. When he escaped a second time and he went to the charity, he could have taken that education, become a lawyer, and become an incredibly wealthy man in his own country, but he didn't. He spent his spare time inspiring others with a view to becoming a lawyer to free even more children. And in his final act of riding a bike through the streets of the town where he once lived, he wanted to give hope to the people who didn't have their children with them. In fact, all of us have probably been inspired by Iqbal, because if we've dropped a single coin in an envelope at the end of a Virgin Atlantic flight, we've donated to the We charity, a charity whose founders were inspired by Iqbal's story. You see, Givers Gain is too powerful to stop, and Givers Gain can change the world.
Wow. What an incredible story. How different a world inspired by Givers Gain could be.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? It could be. This is the point where we put pen to paper. We need to decide what we are going to commit to change over the next 12 months, which will change the world through Givers Gain. We're going to play our song, and what I want you to do is look back through your notes and draw inspiration from the conference. In your workbook, please write down 3 business goals and 3 personal goals. The business goals can, of course, relate to your B&I business or your own business or a combination of both.
These goals will be an important part of your commitment to a world powered by Givers Gain. When people hear your goals, they are going to want to cut you down. you can drown out those voices and say, look out, because here I come, this is me, and I am changing the world.
We've used The Greatest Showman as a theme. It runs all the way through this conference, from that amazing opening right the way through to the sit-down music, to Ali Ross being dressed as a ringmaster at the meeting this morning. No one asked him to, by the way. That's just what he does on a Saturday, just letting you know. And to be honest, we could have picked the subject matter of the film, and there are many stories I could have told you to end tonight. You see, I could have weaved a narrative, I could have put in twists and turns, and it would have fit perfectly with the message that Julian and I wanted you to go away with when we leave this room this evening. However, the story I'm actually going to tell is about the movie itself. You see, The Greatest Showman should not have worked. When you look at the subject matter, this man who was made out to be almost a magical, mystical character, P.J. Barnum. In real life, he was a racist, he was a bigot, animal cruelty, slavery, and even fraud. The man they chose to portray him was better known for having metal spikes coming out of his hand than his musical ability, and there was an actor in there that had proven box office musical success, but he ended up being the co-star with drastically less screen time. They then made the rest of the cast up with singers, dancers, circus performers, and actors that hadn't had a lead role in years. You see, pre-screenings of The Greatest Showman were panned by the critics. So much so that on its opening weekend, it returned less than 5% of its working budget. And normally, the way it works in cinema is your opening weekend is your biggest take, and it then goes downhill from there straight to DVD. But that isn't what happened. You see, this story about a questionable character captured the imagination of the most important people, the audience. Ticket sales actually grew week on week until it became one of the largest grossing movies of the year. It spun sing-off versions and cosplay versions, which cemented itself in cult pop culture. But it wasn't just the on-screen success. The soundtrack of the movie was #1 in the album charts for a year. And it was only knocked off by another version of itself where famous people such as James Arthur and Pink had begged to do their versions of the songs from the movie. There is now even a sequel in the making. You see, on paper, The Greatest Showman should not have worked.
And B and I should not work. If it didn't exist, Greg and I went to Dragon's Den. All 5 dragons would be out before we finished our opening pitch. Maybe the pitch would go a bit like this. I'd like to put a group of 3 thinking entrepreneurs in a room at 6:45 in the morning. I'm going to ask them to follow a strict agenda. The sole purpose of this group is to find business not for themselves, but for other people. And they're going to run the group, so I'm not going to do that. And on top of all of that, I'm going to charge them for that privilege. Look, not only should the concept of B&I not work, it was born in a land where the culture is to compete with your competition, to put them into the ground, not to cooperate with them, but to find business for them. And it was originally set up not because Ivan had a flash of inspiration at 3 in the morning, but because one man in one town did not want to cold call. You see, BNI does work, and it's grown enormously since it was started. It's impacted hundreds of thousands of businesses and millions of people, impacts that we may never know. And the critics of BNI to this day tell us that it's flawed. But like The Greatest Showman, our audience believe. Our members tell us. And it works because right at the core of BNI is a set of values, and right at the core of those set of values is Givers Gain. We've heard about the core values today and yesterday with some amazing presentations. Members of BNI live those values day in, day out. And these are also people that don't just talk about the values, because it's easy, isn't it, to talk about the values. And part of the reason we've put lots of effort into presenting on those values is to make sure we actually live those values. With Givers Gain at the very center, we can take our philosophy into our community. And from now on, we can change the world.
We would like to thank you for all you do.
And thank you for being a key part of our greatest show.